Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Henry A. Lewis, and we are going to be discussing today the returns of the ancient spirits. In the churches today, there's a lot of talk of Jezebel spirits, Ahab spirits, and different strong men that the churches are facing. And in all reality, these spirits, like the Jezebel spirit and the Ahab spirits, are not what the Old Testament teaches about the ancient spirits. These are human beings that were affected by these particular spirits. And there is a movement in the spiritual world today. There's an unrest, so to say, and that's because the enemy knows that his time is short, and he doesn't have much time to accomplish what he wants to accomplish. So he's bringing his strongest lieutenants and bringing them back, and things are beginning to reverse back to the days of Noah. And then the Bible says that it will be as the day of Noah in the days that the Son of Man returns. So in other words, in the time that Jesus chooses to return back for his church, conditions on the earth will be like they were in the days of Noah and in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. And that is, there will be chaos, confusion, perversion, disorder, rebellion everywhere. And it will be the same spirits that are manipulating behind the scene in today's time and era that were responsible for back then in the time of Noah, in the time of Lot, in Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, as you study in the Old Testament, you hear different names of false gods that were worshipped by different nations. For example, you had the Moloch, who was worshipped by the Philistines, and you had Dagon, and you had Baal, and these were all false gods. Baal was actually a rival to Jehovah in the Old Testament, and Israel got carried away into Baal worship, and God sent them into punishment because of it. And the nation of Philistines would offer up their children to Moloch. They had a big statue. It was made of brass, and what they would do is they would heat the statue until the hands of the statue got red hot. They were glowing from the heat of the fires that were burning within the statue. And then the parents would take their infant up and place it in the hands of the statue as an offering to Moloch. And then you had spirits like the prince of Mede and Persia. You know the story in the Old Testament in the book of Daniel, when Daniel begins to pray and fast on the behalf of the nation of Israel to find out what is going to be happening. And then 21 days into his praying and fasting, the angel Gabriel appears to him and says, "Daniel, beloved of the Lord, on the very first day, the Lord heard your prayers, and I was sent to bring you the answer. But as I came, I was held up by the prince of Persia." And what is the prince of Persia? The prince of Persia is a fallen angel that is ruling and reigning with Lucifer in the second heavens. And these fallen angels that are part of the army of Satan each have a different assignment, and they're lords over different areas of the globe, of the earth. Now, the prince of Mede and Persia was responsible for the nation of the Persian nation, of the military, and responsible for the victories that the Persians were having over their different enemies. Now, when Gabriel finally was able to get through, because Michael, the archangel, was sent to help him, he was able to come down, give the message to Daniel, and then said to Daniel, "I need now to return to continue the battle with this prince that was over the area." Now, today we make up different strongmen. The strongman of alcoholism, the strongman of the occult, the Jezebel spirit, the Ahab spirit, this spirit and that spirit. And I understand that the church has problems with these different kind of spirits, but realize this, that the Jezebel spirit is a spirit of rebellion, and it is not the strong man, the original strong man. It is subjected to the original strong man. It follows its commander's order. And you can deal with the Jezebel spirit, you can pray against it, you can bind it, you can cast it out. But until you deal with the power behind that spirit, you'll not have total victory. And the reason why I feel, or I want to begin to share with you on this topic called the return of the ancient spirits, because as you become aware of the names of these strong men, then you will have the power to bind them, and you will have the victory over them, or the people that need to be set free will have the victory over them. Instead of fighting foot soldiers, we're going to be fighting the generals. Now, where did these strong men originally come from? In Genesis, the 6th chapter, we are talked about, we're shown in the scripture about the sons of God who are observing the daughters of men. And they find that these women are very appealing to them. And they make a decision to leave their first estate and to intermingle with human women. And they have relationships, and strong giants are born. Now, these angels that left their first estate are the strong men over different areas of this globe. In the record of Enoch, the book of Enoch, which was rejected from being canonized because they did not feel that it passed the test of a canonized book, that it wasn't 100% accurate in even geography or history or cultural or spiritual or science. There was something that wasn't quite completed. So they debated for a long time. The book of Enoch was almost canonized, and for a while it was, and then it was rejected. It was taken out, all right, and it was considered to be a Old Testament apocrypha, just a book of history or culture or legends. But in the book of Enoch, he writes about the watchers, and in his record they state there was 200 in total. And these watchers were angels that were sent to observe things that were going on the earth. And as they were watching and observing, they began to notice the daughters of men. The leader, whose name was Samyazah, according to Hebrew tradition, he decided that he was going to take an earthly woman and have relationship with her. And he told his ideas to the others that were overlords of the 200. He said, I fear that I will make this decision on my own, and then will have to stand in judgment by myself. And well, the other leaders made a promise, 20 in all, that they would follow his example, and they would also select a woman to have a relationship with. And eventually all 200 of these watchers followed the example of their leader, Samyazah, and they began to have relationships. Now, the records of Enoch says that the children that they produced were 300 cubits in height. All the food that man can provide for them, and they wasn't getting enough, so they turned on the human race. They began to eat birds and animals and whatever they could get their hands on. And then eventually they began to eat human beings, and that's where cannibalism came in. And then finally, as we understand, God had enough of the pollution of these creatures and the rebellion of man. And you know that he talked to Noah, the only righteous man of his generation. And he had Noah build the ark, and Noah and his family entered into the ark, and God closed the door, and he destroyed all life on the surface of the earth, doing away with these offsprings of the fallen angels and the daughters of men. Okay, that should have ended the problem right then and there, but after the flood, when mankind started to repopulate the earth, the same problem came up. The angels, which were not destroyed in the flood, once again made the decision that they were going to have relationships with human women, and giants were produced again. Now, each and every one of these giants that was produced is the origin of your false gods and goddesses. You know, can you imagine what it was like to be an average man? At that time, a height was about 4'11". If you was lucky, you might have been 5 foot. And your weight was somewhere around maybe 110, 120 pounds. They were not really big men at the time. All of a sudden, you're going on a journey and you see a creature that looks like a human being, but is standing over 13 feet in height and weighing in the hundreds of pounds. Okay, immediately you consider that this thing is a human, is a god, because of its great size and its great strength. I mean, you've never seen anything like this in your life or in the village that you grew up in and you lived in, okay? And immediately you begin to worship this creature because of its size and because of its strength and because of its power. And they became legends. It was like Nimrod. Nimrod was a giant, and he was worshipped because of his strength and his knowledge of warfare. And as Nimrod, with his army, conquered different areas, the legend of Nimrod began to spread among the different cultures. And of course, they would change his name to a name that was suitable to their language. And Nimrod became Hercules, or Heracles, the demigod of the Greek and the Romans, the god of strength, the god of power, and the god of might. And he was quite famous because of the skin of the lion that he wore across his shoulders. He had killed this lion with his bare hands, and then he wore the skin of the lion wherever he went. And when they saw this young man with the lion skin across his shoulders, they immediately knew that this was the great Hercules. Okay? Well, actually, Nimrod had killed a lion, and he wore the skin of the lion across his shoulders. And he picked up a name which meant the bespectacled one because of the spots in the coat of the lion that he was wearing. Some translators think that it was the skin of a leopard. But either way, if you kill a leopard or a lion with your hands and with a spear, you have accomplished something. And so they called him the bespectacled one. And wherever Nimrod went, that mantle that he had across his shoulder was a sign of who he was. Everybody knew him because of that skin. Well, Heracles, or Hercules, means the bespectacled one. And Isis means the bespectacled one. So Isis and Isis, the Egyptian god and goddess, is actually Nimrod and his wife Semiramis. So you see how his fame grows in different cultures, and they just changed the name, all right? They changed his name, just like in different cultures. Semiramis, his wife, who was also his mother, well, she begins to take on different names throughout the different cultures. And in every culture in the world, you have a statue of a Madonna, a young woman holding an infant in their hands. In the Catholic tradition, that is Mary, the mother of Jesus. But in China, it is their saint, their virtual saint, holding their God in her arms. In India, it is Kali holding Ganesh in her arms. And in different cultures, it's a different name of the being, but it's the same being. And these people, like Semiramis and Nimrod, are the ones that are responsible for developing these demigods or these false gods. Okay? And now, these angels that were intermarrying with the woman on the face of the earth, they became the power over the atmosphere and over different countries, different villages, different cities. And each and every one of these angels taught something to the woman that they were having a relationship with. Now, there was an angel called Azazel, and he taught men how to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates, how to make, for the woman, to make mirrors, how to do eyeshadow, and all kinds of dye, so they can dye their clothes a different color, even dye their hair. He brought all this into existence. This is what he taught the woman, okay, that he was having relationships with, and that he taught the men how to make these weapons of war. There was another angel, Amazarek, okay, he taught sorcery and the dividing of roots, herbology, how to mix different roots together to produce different spells. He taught this to the woman. He introduced the occultic science in the world. You have Amir, who taught the solution of sorcery. In other words, he taught the different formulas that they would use in casting spells and in making drugs. He taught them how to put these combinations together to produce the chemicals that was needed, or to bring the spell to fulfillment. There was another angel called Bakadgel. These are all Hebrew names, and this is all in Hebrew tradition and Hebrew history and in Hebrew legend. And you have to research many different books. You got to go into like the Apocryphas, the uncanonized books, and the legends and the tales that are told are rooted in truth.